The goddess drew breath, and all was still. I just finished Deadhouse Gates by Steven Erikson, which is the second tale in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, and holy crap, this one was really good, y'all. I really like Gardens of the Moon. I thought that it was a strong start, and I definitely thought going into this book it would not top it because I heard a lot of people didn't like this one as much as the first one. So I kind of went in with lower expectations, and I shouldn't have, because let me tell you guys right now, Deadhouse Gates is better than Gardens of the Moon in pretty much every single way. So let me just get straight into my review. First of all, I only have literally one complaint, and that is just a personal thing. At first, I really struggled with Felison, who is one of the main characters in this story. She goes through, let us just say, a lot of trauma. I mean, that's not going to be a surprise for anyone who reads this. She goes through a really traumatic story in this book. And while I sympathize with her character immensely, she was making decisions in the first half of this book that just kind of made me dislike her a lot, even though the decisions she was making logistically make sense for her character. It's just like, man, could you not be so nasty to literally everyone around you 24/7? I get you're going through some stuff, but you don't need to perpetuate that onto other people. That is literally my only complaint, and it's done on purpose because it's a more realistic interpretation of what trauma does to people. I just was like, oh man, this is like, I don't like how she acts towards other people, but it makes sense. It's literally my only complaint, and it's a minor one at that. Everything else, though, it's great. The world building here is exactly what you would come to expect out of the series if you've read Gardens of the Moon. It's excellent. It's actually really insane, and I don't think I picked up on everything. The plot is awesome. The action is awesome. The magic is probably even cooler here, in my opinion. I think the character work here is much better. I think the character dynamics is much better. I think the way it's written is much better. It feels like more, I don't want to say it feels like a more concise book, but it feels like I understood more of what was going on generally, especially as it kept going. I love this book. I love Mappo and Ikariam, who are this duo that you follow throughout the story, and they have this great dynamic between the two of them. And the reason that they're together and the reason that they have this entire dynamic, when you realize what's going on between the two of them, heartbreaking stuff. I will say that is a common theme throughout this book. If you want to have your heart ripped out and stomped on, Steven Erikson does it in Deadhouse Gates. I tell you that right now. I mean, there were so many moments in this and throughout this book where I was just like, oh, it can't get any worse. And it did. It got so much worse. I just talked about Felison. Her storyline throughout this book is severely traumatic, to the point where I would almost say that if you are someone who has a history of violence in your past and are someone who can be triggered by those things, maybe don't read this book, because there's some stuff that she goes through in this, man, that I was like, oh, that is so dark. That is so dark. But it's so well done. It doesn't feel like it's not like, oh, look at how dark this is. Look how edgy and dark this is. No, it's very grounded and realistic despite the epic fantasy background that surrounds it. It's surprising how well it's handled, because I know a lot of authors who deal with trauma and they just mishandle it the entire time. Erikson does not. It feels like he really gets the human condition and what it's like to experience some of these things, even if he has not personally experienced them. It's just amazing. I will also say that our boy Fiddler, who is one of the bridge burners, shows back up in the story, and I love his plotline throughout this. Him and Kalam and Apsalar and Crocus have a great storyline throughout this entire book, and I love every single character in this book. I struggled with a few of them at first, but I really came around on everyone in the end. Even this guy named Icarus Pust, who is literally a demented old man who's going insane. He's really fun. I really love him. But yeah, if you're someone who loves characters and a diverse set of characters, Deadhouse Gates. But I will say, the thing that is, in my opinion, the best about this book is a very specific storyline called The Chain of Dogs. And I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details because I don't want to ruin this for anyone, but it's on the back, so I'm not going to spoil it too much. This army, one of the Malazan armies, is led by this guy named Coltane, who is this Wiccan war chief, right? And he's been basically newly promoted to becoming a fist, which is like a general. And he has to lead, I think, like 50,000 refugees throughout this ginormous desert while they're being hunted down by rebel forces, and they're slowly being dwindled off. And again, don't want to give away too much, but it is some of the most epic, harrowing stuff I've ever read. I mean, the battles are absolutely awesome. Coltane himself, you never get into his head, but he is one of the greatest fantasy characters I've ever read. I mean, he's my guy. I think he's my favorite character in Malazan now. He is literally him. I just loved The Chain of Dogs in this. I don't know if it's just because I'm already predisposed to loving military stuff, or this is a new thing for me, but the military fantasy in this is really, really good, and I think it's the best storyline in this entire book. I will also say, though, I think if you don't like military fantasy, you might really struggle with it because it takes up a lot of room in this storyline. It's not the only thing that's really important. There are a lot of great storylines throughout this, but it's definitely the one that, to me, was most prominent. It's the one that I was most invested in. There's still a ton of going on with all the other characters. I mean, a ton. There are so many twists and turns and things you won't expect. This book has like a million different things going for it. But yeah, this is epic. I mean, I could probably sit here and explain in depth why it's so epic, but I think you should just genuinely sit down and read it. Character work is great, character dynamics are great, world building's great, action's great, the plot is absolutely awesome. I think it blows Guardians out of the Moon when it comes to plot. I think the humor's way better. I think the dialogue's way better. I think pretty much everything that Guardians of the Moon does well is done, like, I'm going to say 5 times better in this book. And it's longer, so you get to spend more time with these characters and get more attached to them. And I will say there are a lot of moments throughout this entire story that I was pretty close. I was getting kind of close to crying. Especially towards the end, I was getting kind of close to crying. I didn't, but man, I got really close at some points. I was definitely heartbroken. So if you have not decided to pick up Guardians of the Moon yet, please do, just so you can read Deadhouse Gates, because this is just a fantastic sequel. It's a fantastic story. It's very well written. I highly recommend it. I'm going to give it a 9.2 out of 10. Yeah, that feels right. It was genuinely really good, and I'm really excited for Memories of Ice, which is the 3rd one. Until then, see you around.